The bell above the door of the small diner chimed as the wind swept in, bringing with it the unmistakable smell of rain and the hum of the city outside. It was a Wednesday morning, just another ordinary shift for Tasha Williams, a waitress at Lena's Diner, a hole-in-the-wall spot known for its greasy breakfasts and local charm. But today was different. Today, something would happen that would change her life forever. Tasha was wiping down a table near the window when she heard a soft voice say, "Excuse me, could I get a coffee? Black? And maybe a menu?" She looked up, expecting the usual tired businessman or sleepy-eyed student. Instead, her eyes locked onto a familiar face, one she'd seen in movies, posters, and countless magazine covers. Keanu Reeves. She froze for a second. The man who had captivated audiences for decades, the one with that quiet charisma and undeniable kindness in his eyes, was sitting at her diner. The reality of the moment hit her like a freight train. She blinked, unsure if she was dreaming, but then she saw the faint grin on his face, the kind that was warm yet humble. He wasn't looking for attention. He was just there. Tasha quickly wiped her hands on her apron and hurried over to his table, trying her best to stay calm. "Of course, I'll be right back with that." Her voice felt like it belonged to someone else. She couldn't remember the last time she'd felt this nervous. As she turned to walk to the counter, her manager, Rick, called out from the back, "Tasha, get your head in the game. No time to stare at the customers. They come for food, not for your fangirl moments." His words snapped her out of the daze, but she couldn't shake the fluttering in her chest. She was just about to serve Keanu Reeves, for heaven's sake. She grabbed the coffee pot, her hands shaking slightly as she filled a mug. "Get it together, Tasha," she muttered under her breath. "This is just another customer." But as she approached the table, she couldn't help but feel the weight of the moment. "Here you go, black coffee, just like you asked," she said, setting the mug down. She forced a smile, but she couldn't help but be in awe. "Is there anything else I can get for you? Maybe the house special?" Keanu looked up, his eyes soft and friendly, and for a moment, it felt like they were the only two people in the room. "You know, I think I'll go with the special. Sounds like just what I need." Tasha nodded, trying her best to act like everything was normal. But inside, her thoughts were racing. She'd seen so many interviews with Keanu, heard stories of his humility and generosity. Everyone said he was different, down to earth, kind. And yet, here he was, sitting right in front of her like any other person, ordering breakfast at a greasy spoon diner. As she went to turn away, a small voice from the corner of the diner caught her attention. "Tasha." It was Rick, waving her over impatiently. "Don't keep him waiting. Hurry up." Tasha's heart skipped a beat. She didn't want to make a scene, but something in her gut told her that this wasn't just any other table. This moment could be something bigger, something more important than just another breakfast rush. But before she could make a decision, Keanu's voice stopped her in her tracks. "You know, I'm always impressed by waitresses like you. You handle this place with such grace. It's not easy, is it?" Tasha turned back, surprised. I guess it's all I've known," she said, feeling a sudden wave of pride mixed with nervousness. "But yeah, it's not easy. The diner's always busy, and people don't always appreciate it." Keanu gave her a thoughtful nod, his eyes steady. "Well, I appreciate it. And I think people like you are the heart of places like this." Tasha felt her chest tighten at his words. It was the kind of thing she never expected to hear from someone like him. As she walked away to place his order, she couldn't stop thinking about the weight of his compliment. In a world that often overlooked people like her, being acknowledged, truly seen, felt like a rare gift. Little did she know, this brief encounter would spark something that would turn her world upside down. That simple act of kindness, that small conversation with a Hollywood star, would set in motion a chain of events that would change everything she knew. Tasha had no idea that in just a few short hours, she would lose everything she'd worked so hard for. She had no idea that her fate was about to take an unexpected turn. But one thing was clear. Her life was never going to be the same again. What would you do if you lost everything in one moment? Hit subscribe and leave a comment below with what you would do if you were in my shoes. Would you stand up for what's right, even if it cost you everything? This story might just spark a new beginning. And with that, Tasha set the plate of food down in front of Keanu, not knowing that this was only the beginning of a story she could never have imagined. Tasha stood at the window of the diner, watching the rain begin to fall in sheets, blurring the city skyline beyond. She had just served Keanu's meal, but her thoughts were a world away. The weight of his words kept echoing in her mind. The heart of places like this, she thought about what that meant. Could she really be more than just a waitress? Could someone like her ever step out of the shadows and become something more? The uncertainty gnawed at her. But it wasn't the first time she'd felt uncertain. Tasha's life had never been simple. Growing up in a neighborhood where every day felt like a battle for survival, she learned early on that the world didn't make it easy for people like her. Born to a single mother who worked multiple jobs just to keep food on the table, Tasha was no stranger to hardship. She'd spent her childhood dreaming of a life beyond the concrete streets of East Atlanta, but reality had a way of reminding her that dreams didn't always come true. Her mom, Cheryl, had always been her rock, always telling her that hard work and kindness would get you far. Tasha believed that, for a long time, she really did. But as she got older, she began to realize that life had a way of pushing people down, especially those who didn't have the right skin color or last name. Tasha did everything she could to escape the cycle, but no matter how hard she tried, the odds seemed stacked against her. She graduated high school with good grades, working late nights as a cashier at a local grocery store to help pay for textbooks. Her dream had always been to become a nurse, to help others in ways that might lift her family out of poverty. But when her mom got sick and was diagnosed with cancer, Tasha had to put everything on hold. She became the caregiver, spending endless nights by her mother's bedside, trying to balance a full-time job and school. It was that sacrifice, the kind of selflessness her mother had always taught her, that led her to where she was now. Lena's Diner, a small family-owned place that didn't pay much but offered enough to keep the lights on. The regulars were familiar, if a little rough around the edges. Mr. Stanley, the old man who came in every morning for a cup of coffee and a chat, Clara, the single mother who came in with her kids after school, and the truckers who stopped in for a quick meal before hitting the road. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady work, and it paid the bills. But there were days when Tasha felt invisible. Days when she stood behind the counter, refilling coffee cups and taking orders, her name never mentioned except when someone needed something. She was good at what she did, and she'd always prided herself on that. She knew her customers by name. She could guess what they'd order before they said a word, and her smile, no matter how tired she was always genuine. But beneath the surface, there were cracks. She thought about Mason, her 8-year-old son. He was the center of her universe, the reason she put on a brave face every day. She had him young, and the moment she found out she was pregnant, she knew her life was no longer just about her. It was about him, but that came with its own set of challenges. The nights she stayed up late, working on her homework in between shifts. The weekends spent cleaning houses or delivering takeout, just to make sure Mason could have the things he needed. She knew it was harder for him than it had been for her. The schools in their area were underfunded, and she'd seen the way other kids looked at him because he didn't have the same things they did. But Tasha refused to let her son feel the weight of their situation. She kept him enrolled in extracurricular activities, making sure he had something to look forward to, something that made him feel special. Mason had already taken after her in so many ways. He had her quiet determination, her love for reading, and a knack for drawing. He loved comic books and often spent hours sketching superheroes and landscapes, dreaming of a life far away from their apartment in the city. Tasha smiled to herself as she thought about him. He was her why, her reason to keep going when everything seemed impossible. But life wasn't easy. She knew it wasn't going to be. And yet, every day, she held on to the hope that something would change. She just didn't know how or when. As she stood by the counter, the bell above the door rang again. She turned to see Rick approaching, his face tight with irritation. "Hey, Tasha, you still have your head in the clouds? Keanu Reeves or not, you need to focus on your job. Got a full station waiting. Let's get moving," Rick snapped, his voice cold. Tasha's smile faltered, but she didn't respond. She'd long ago learned to take Rick's harsh words with a grain of salt. He wasn't a bad guy, just lacking in empathy. But there was something different about today. Something that had started when Keanu Reeves had walked through that door. Maybe it was his words. Maybe it was the feeling of being seen, really seen, for the first time in a long while. She couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted, that her life was on the edge of something new. But what could it be? She set her apron back on and took the next order, pushing her thoughts aside. Whatever it would have to wait. For now, she had a job to do, and Mason would be waiting for her at home, asking about his drawing lessons and his favorite superhero. She had responsibilities, but a small part of her couldn't help but wonder, was this just another day, or was something truly changing? And deep down, Tasha knew that something bigger was coming. It had to be. The next few days at Lena's diner were anything but ordinary. Tasha couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed, even though nothing outwardly was different. There was an unusual energy in the air, a sort of anticipation that hung around her like an invisible cloak. She found herself replaying the brief conversation with Keanu in her head, over and over again. You know, I'm always impressed by waitresses like you. You handle this place with such grace. His words seemed like an affirmation she didn't even know she needed. But life didn't slow down. There was still work to be done, still bills to pay, and Mason to care for. She had to get up every morning and face the same challenges, the same struggles that had always been there. However, the diner felt different now. For one thing, her regular customers were noticing the change. There was a buzz around Tasha's table, a sort of hushed excitement when people recognized her or caught wind of her brush with celebrity. It wasn't just Keanu that had people talking. It was the fact that she, Tasha Williams, a waitress in a small-town diner, had been noticed. And that, it seemed, was a novelty. It wasn't long before Tasha noticed that people were treating her a bit differently. Some were just a little too interested in her life, asking questions she didn't always feel comfortable answering. So, what's he like? Keanu. I mean, is he as nice as they say? What does it feel like to serve a movie star? They'd ask. Tasha wasn't used to this attention, and part of her just wanted things to go back to normal. But normal was starting to feel further and further out of reach. At the same time, Rick, the manager, was starting to push harder. You've got the public's attention now, he'd say, grinning in a way that didn't quite sit well with her. You better take advantage of it. Maybe we can even get a few more customers in here. You never know what could happen when you've got a star like Keanu Reeves walking through the door. Tasha didn't like how Rick was suddenly acting like they were some kind of show to put on for customers. The diner was a business, sure, but it wasn't a circus. People came here because it was a quiet place, a place they could escape. Now, there was a sense of pressure, an expectation, and it was beginning to feel suffocating. One morning, as Tasha was bringing out a breakfast special for a family of 4, she saw a news van pull up in front of the diner. Her stomach flipped as the reporters piled out of the van, cameras in tow. "What's going on?" she murmured, half to herself. Rick saw the van too and rubbed his hands together. "Looks like we're in the spotlight now, huh? You ready for this?" Tasha's mind raced. Why are they here? "They heard about you and Keanu," Rick said, his grin widening. "This could be good for business. Let's see what they have to say." The reporters approached the door, their cameras flashing as they caught sight of Tasha, who instinctively straightened up. A camera was shoved in her face before she could even process what was happening. "Excuse me, Miss Williams," a reporter shouted over the crowd of people gathering at the entrance. "We'd love to get your side of the story about the encounter you had with actor Keanu Reeves. Can you tell us what it was like to serve him?" Tasha's heart started racing. The attention felt overwhelming, and suddenly, she wasn't sure how to handle it. Was this really her life now? She had never been one for the spotlight. She just wanted to do her job, care for her son, and keep things steady. It was just a normal morning, she stammered, trying to find the right words. He's just like any other customer. Came in for breakfast, and we had a nice conversation. The reporters didn't seem satisfied. "But, Miss Williams, we've heard he's spoken highly of you. How does it feel to be recognized by someone so famous?" Tasha's mind was spinning. She didn't know how to answer, and part of her just wanted to disappear. But she could feel Rick's eyes on her, urging her to play it up, to sell the story. He even whispered from behind her, "Come on, Tasha. This is your moment. Suddenly, she felt exposed. The entire diner had fallen silent, the regulars' eyes on her, some curious, others maybe envious. She could sense that the moment was slipping away, and the last thing she wanted was to be seen as some kind of spectacle. I don't know, she said slowly, taking a deep breath. It's nice, I guess, but I'm just doing my job. It's not about me. It's about the people who come in here every day, the people who work hard and keep this place going. That's what really matters. The reporters seemed a bit caught off guard, not quite expecting that response. Right? One of them mumbled, clearly disappointed. Well, thank you for your time, Miss Williams. We'll let you get back to work. Tasha turned and walked away, her heart pounding in her chest. The crowd began to disperse, but the feeling of unease didn't go away. She had never asked for this attention. She just wanted to go back to being Tasha, the woman who served pancakes and coffee with a smile, not the woman who had to answer questions about celebrities. As the reporters left, Tasha caught a glimpse of Rick, who was already back at the counter, eyes gleaming with excitement. See, he said, this is just the beginning. I told you things were going to change around here. But Tasha wasn't so sure. This wasn't what she had envisioned. She hadn't signed up for this kind of attention. She just wanted to live a quiet life with Mason, but it seemed that wasn't going to be possible anymore. Later that night, when Tasha got home, she found Mason curled up on the couch, drawing as usual. He looked up as she walked in, his face lighting up. Hey, Mom. How was your day? Did you get to meet any more famous people today? He laughed, showing off his latest drawing of a superhero. Tasha forced a smile, sitting beside him. It was just another day, kiddo. Just another day. But even as she said the words, she knew that the quiet life she tried to carve out for them was slipping away, and the storm of change was only just beginning. The days after the news report felt like a blur. The morning after the reporters left the diner, Tasha awoke with a heavy heart. She had hoped it was all just a fleeting moment, a storm that would pass. But when she opened her phone to check the time, her inbox was flooded with messages. Not just from family or friends. No, this was different. Fans. The text messages and notifications came from all over, people commenting on her appearance in the news report, congratulating her on her newfound fame. Her stomach churned as she scrolled through post after post of people asking if they could meet her, take selfies, or just know more about her story. This isn't me, she thought. The constant barrage of attention only made her want to disappear. She was still Tasha from the diner, still the mother who woke up early to serve breakfast and then picked up her son from school. Yet now, it seemed like the world was trying to paint her into something she wasn't. Rick, of course, couldn't contain his excitement. Every time Tasha entered the diner, his eyes lit up like she was a star, because in his eyes, she was. He had been pushing for more media attention, more interviews, and it was becoming harder to ignore his enthusiasm. She could feel him watching her every move, waiting for the next opportunity to promote her as the woman who served Keanu Reeves. But Tasha wasn't a celebrity. She wasn't a story for the tabloids. She was just a woman trying to make a living, trying to take care of her son. Yet there she was, caught in a whirlwind of attention she hadn't asked for. One morning, while serving her usual crowd, the door opened with a loud chime, and in walked Lana, the local news anchor. Tasha had seen Lana a few times before, but today, there was something different about the way she entered. Like she was here for business, not breakfast. Rick was quick to approach her, greeting her with an eager smile. Well, if it isn't the star of the hour, Rick said, his voice dripping with a hint of sarcasm, though his eyes sparkled with pride. What can I get you, Lana? Lana waved her hand dismissively. I'm not here for coffee, she said, walking toward Tasha. I actually wanted to talk to you, Miss Williams. Tasha's stomach tightened. She hadn't planned on being the topic of conversation for a local news outlet. But this felt different. It felt like an intrusion. I don't know if I'm ready for this, Tasha said, setting a coffee pot down with a soft clink. She glanced over at Rick, who was beaming like he had won some kind of prize. He leaned against the counter, watching the exchange unfold with anticipation. Lana smiled reassuringly. You don't have to do anything you're uncomfortable with. I just wanted to know how things have changed since that day. I mean, you've practically become an overnight sensation. Tasha blinked. An overnight sensation? She hadn't even had the time to process what had happened. All she knew was that her quiet, predictable life had been turned upside down in the span of a few hours, and it felt like she was losing control. I appreciate your interest, Tasha said, her voice tight. But I'm just a waitress. Nothing more than that. Lana didn't seem fazed by the resistance in Tasha's voice. But you're more than that now, aren't you? People are following your every move. You've caught the attention of some pretty important people. You could do a lot with this moment, Tasha. Have you considered using it to your advantage? Tasha's heart began to race. This isn't what I wanted. She wanted to yell, to tell Lana that this wasn't the life she had planned. But instead, she forced a smile and nodded. I'm just doing my job. That's all. I'm not interested in any of this. But Lana wasn't giving up. You're not just doing your job anymore, Tasha. You're inspiring people. You've become a role model. It could be a platform for you to speak on important issues, raise awareness about causes close to your heart. Don't you want to make a bigger difference? Help your community? Tasha's mind reeled with the weight of her words. What was Lana saying? Was this really the opportunity she'd been waiting for? Was she truly capable of turning this into something bigger than herself? Her phone buzzed on the counter, distracting her for a moment. A quick glance at the screen revealed a message from Mason's teacher. Mason had a little incident at school today. Please give me a call as soon as you can. Her heart sank. No matter how much the world outside was pushing for change, her son's well-being would always be her first priority. But there was no denying the pull of Lana's words. Tasha had always wanted to make a difference. Hadn't that been her reason for dreaming of becoming a nurse? To help others? Was this her shot at something more? As she processed everything, Rick's voice cut through her thoughts. What do you say, Tasha? This is a big deal. This could be your chance to finally break free from the life you've been stuck in. Tasha clenched her fists at her sides. The pressure was mounting, but deep down, she knew she wasn't ready for this. Not yet. She looked up at Lana and shook her head. I need to think about it, she said softly. But right now, my son needs me. I'll call you later. With that, she turned and left the diner, the weight of the moment settling heavily on her shoulders. Outside, the cool air hit her face, a sharp contrast to the suffocating feeling that had filled the diner. She pulled her jacket tighter around her and dialed the number for Mason's school. As she waited for the line to connect, Tasha realized that no matter how much the world might change around her, she couldn't lose sight of what truly mattered: her son, her family, and the quiet strength that had always carried her forward. But the truth was, the changes happening in her life were impossible to ignore. The storm had only just begun. The days that followed were a whirlwind. Between the sudden media attention, Rick's constant prodding, and the overwhelming pressure of it all, Tasha felt like she was caught in a storm, struggling to stay afloat. Every day felt like a battle to keep her head above water, and every step she took seemed to lead her deeper into unknown territory. Mason had become more withdrawn, something that hadn't gone unnoticed by Tasha. He used to fill their home with the sound of his laughter, his drawings, and his endless questions. But now, he was quiet. He spent more time in his room, his head buried in books or his phone. The constant stress in the air had seeped into him, and it broke Tasha's heart to see it. One evening, as Tasha sat at the kitchen table, sipping her coffee and staring out the window, Mason entered the room. His face was serious, his usual smile nowhere to be found. "Mom," he said, his voice soft. "Are you okay?" Tasha blinked, startled by his question. She had always been the one to ask him how he was doing, not the other way around. But Mason had always been more observant than she gave him credit for. "I'm fine, honey," Tasha replied, though her voice felt hollow, just a little tired. Mason didn't seem convinced. He crossed the room and sat down beside her, looking up at her with those big, brown eyes that always seemed to see right through her. "You're not fine. I can tell. Everyone at school is talking about you, Mom. About how you helped Keanu Reeves, how you're famous now." Tasha's heart sank. She hadn't realized how much this had reached Mason's world. "I didn't ask for this, Mason," she said, her voice breaking. "I never wanted any of this attention." Mason nodded slowly, his expression thoughtful. I know, but I think it's kind of cool. Everyone's talking about how you're different now. Like you're special. Tasha shook her head, a lump forming in her throat. This isn't what I wanted for him. For us. I'm not special, sweetie. I'm just your mom. I'm doing the best I can, okay? She forced a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. Mason was silent for a long moment, then spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. Mom, you don't have to do this alone. You don't have to carry all the weight by yourself. You're not just some waitress. You're my mom, and you're amazing. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. Tasha felt the tears sting her eyes. She pulled Mason into an embrace, holding him tightly, as if he were the anchor she so desperately needed. In that moment, the noise of the outside world faded away. There was no fame, no cameras, no reporters, just the quiet comfort of her son's love. Thank you, baby, she whispered, her voice trembling. I needed to hear that. The next day, Tasha went into work with a new sense of clarity. She couldn't keep running from the storm, but she also couldn't let it consume her. She had to find a balance between the woman the world thought she was and the woman she knew herself to be. She couldn't let Rick turn her into a commodity, and she certainly couldn't let the pressure of media attention distract her from the one thing that truly mattered, Mason. When she walked into the diner, she was met with an unusual silence. The customers were still there, but there was a sense of anticipation in the air, like everyone was waiting for something. Rick was already at the counter, his eyes scanning the room with the look of a man on a mission. Tasha, there's someone here who wants to meet you, he said, his voice tight with excitement. She's from a big magazine. Wants to feature you in an article. This is the break we've been waiting for. Tasha froze. She had been dreading this moment, the moment where she would be expected to play into the role the world had written for her. No, she said, shaking her head. I'm not doing it. Rick's eyes widened in disbelief. What do you mean, no? I mean I'm not doing this, Tasha repeated, her voice firmer now. I'm not here for headlines. I'm here to work, Rick, and I'm not going to let you turn me into some kind of spectacle. Rick's expression faltered, but he quickly recovered. You don't get it, do you? This is your chance, Tasha. You're already making waves. You could have everything. You could get out of here and start something new. Tasha met his gaze, her resolve hardening. I'm not interested in a new life, Rick. I'm interested in my son. I'm interested in keeping this place the way it was, without turning it into a circus. The tension between them was thick. Rick seemed taken aback by her response, but Tasha wasn't backing down. She had already made her decision. As the day wore on, Tasha felt a weight lift from her shoulders. It wasn't easy to stand her ground, but she knew it was the right thing to do. She had always been the type to go with the flow, to avoid confrontation, but this time, she couldn't let fear or doubt control her. The phone rang at the front of the diner, and Rick answered it quickly, his voice lowering as he spoke to the person on the other end. Tasha could hear the words Keanu Reeves and media deal coming through the line, but she ignored them. She had made her choice. As the evening approached, the diner began to empty out, and Tasha sat alone at the counter, reflecting on the events of the past few days. For the first time in what felt like forever, she felt at peace. She wasn't going to let the world tell her who she was. She knew who she was. She was Tasha Williams, a mother, a waitress, and a woman who would protect her son no matter what. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. It had been a few weeks since Tasha made the decision to stay grounded, to reject the allure of fame and media attention. Life in the diner had settled back into its usual rhythm. The chatter of regular customers, the clinking of cups and plates, and the constant hum of the coffee machine provided the backdrop for Tasha's everyday routine. Yet, there was still something in the air. Tasha couldn't shake the feeling that a storm was brewing just beyond the horizon. She couldn't completely ignore the whispers that still floated through the diner, nor could she forget the way Rick looked at her now. It wasn't with the same pride and respect. Now, it felt like disappointment, a silent judgment in his eyes whenever their paths crossed. Despite this, Tasha stayed firm. She wasn't going to let her life be defined by the expectations of others. The most important thing was her son, and Mason needed her more than ever. That evening, as Tasha was wiping down the counter. The door opened with its usual chime, and a familiar voice called out, "Tasha, I've been looking everywhere for you." She turned and saw Rick standing at the door with a wide grin plastered on his face. But it wasn't just Rick standing there. Beside him, in a tailored suit, was none other than Keanu Reeves himself. Tasha's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't seen him since the day he left the diner. "Keanu?" Tasha said, blinking in disbelief. The sight of the Hollywood icon standing in her diner felt surreal. It was as though the world had just collided in the most unexpected of ways. Keanu smiled gently, his calm demeanor as soothing as she remembered. "Tasha, it's good to see you again. I hope I'm not interrupting anything." Rick was practically bouncing with excitement behind them. "Interrupting? Not at all. This is amazing, right? This is it, Tasha. This is the big moment." Tasha's mind raced. She had made it clear to Rick that she wasn't interested in becoming some kind of media sensation. But now, Keanu Reeves was here, standing in front of her, and the weight of the situation felt too heavy to ignore. "Mason is at home," she said, her voice shaking a little. "I don't know what this is about, but—" Keanu took a step forward, his expression warm and genuine. "I know I'm probably the last person you expected to see, but I've been thinking a lot about that day. You helped me when I needed it the most, Tasha. I wanted to return the favor." Tasha was speechless. She couldn't comprehend what was happening. Why was Keanu here? What could he possibly want from her? Rick cut in, his voice full of enthusiasm. "Keanu wants to offer you something, Tasha. He's been working on a project, and he wants you to be a part of it." Tasha shook her head, still unsure whether she was dreaming. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, looking at Rick in confusion. "I'm just a waitress. I don't belong in whatever world you guys are talking about." Keanu's smile didn't waver. "You might not think so, but I saw something in you, Tasha. The way you treated me, your kindness, it's rare. I want to help you, if you'll let me." Tasha's heart was racing, her mind struggling to keep up. This was the moment she had feared, the moment when everything she had been running from came crashing into her reality. Rick stepped forward, his voice insistent. "This is huge, Tasha. We're talking about a real opportunity here. You can make a difference. This could change everything for you." For the first time, Tasha felt the weight of her decision bearing down on her. What if this was the opportunity she had been waiting for? What if she was being given the chance to do something bigger, to make a difference in the world? But the nagging voice in her head told her that this wasn't her. She wasn't meant to be in the spotlight, to become part of a world that wasn't hers. "Mason needs me," Tasha finally said, her voice trembling. "I can't leave him. I can't just disappear into some project, no matter how good it sounds." Keanu nodded understandingly, his expression softening. "I understand, Tasha. This is your decision. But I wanted you to know that the offer is there. No pressure. I just wanted to thank you for what you did for me. You gave me something I can never repay." Tasha looked at Keanu, her chest tight with emotion. There was something about his sincerity that made her question everything. But deep down, she knew what mattered most. Her son, her family. "I appreciate it, Keanu. Really. But I'm not ready for this," Tasha said softly, feeling a weight lift from her chest as she spoke the words aloud. Rick, clearly disappointed, gave her a frustrated look. "Tasha, you don't get it. This is your shot. Don't throw it away." But Tasha remained firm. "I don't need a shot, Rick. I have everything I need right here." With a final glance at Keanu, who nodded as if he understood, Tasha turned away. She wasn't going to let her life be dictated by fleeting moments or the desire for fame. She wasn't just some waitress, but she wasn't someone who would be swept up in a world she didn't belong to, either. As Keanu and Rick left the diner, Tasha stood by the window, her hands pressed against the cool glass. She had made the right choice. Her life wasn't about Hollywood moments or public acclaim. It was about the quiet strength she had within her, the love she had for her son, and the life she had built on her own terms. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, and she pulled it out to see a message from Mason's school. "Mason's waiting for you to pick him up. He's excited to see you." Tasha smiled, her heart warming as she read the message. She wasn't going to let anything come between her and her son. Not fame, not media attention, not even a movie star offering her the world. The moment of truth had passed, and she knew she had made the right decision. The future might hold new challenges, but Tasha was ready to face them, one step at a time. The days following Keanu's visit were filled with reflection. Tasha had made her choice, but she couldn't ignore the ripple effects of that decision. The entire town was still buzzing about her encounter with the famous actor. Social media had exploded, with videos, photos, and rumors spreading faster than Tasha could have ever imagined. It was overwhelming, to say the least. At the diner, she tried to keep things normal. She carried on with her shifts as usual, pouring coffee, taking orders, and listening to the familiar stories of regular customers. But now, every time someone walked in, their eyes would flicker to her, and a murmur would ripple through the crowd. Tasha could feel it. People were looking at her differently. She had become a symbol of something bigger, something she hadn't asked for. One afternoon, as Tasha wiped down a table near the window, a woman approached her. She was in her late 30s, well-dressed, with an air of confidence that could only come from someone used to getting what they wanted. Tasha's first instinct was to retreat, to hide behind the counter and avoid another conversation about the media circus that had followed her. But the woman smiled warmly, her voice soft. "Excuse me, are you Tasha Williams?" Tasha looked up, startled. "Yes, that's me. Can I help you?" The woman hesitated, as if weighing her words carefully. "I'm Rebecca, from Lifestyle magazine. We've been following your story, and I have to say, we're impressed by your strength. We'd love to feature you in our next issue." Tasha froze. Another media pitch. She had expected this, but the reality of it still made her stomach churn. She wasn't sure how much more she could handle. "I'm not really interested in interviews or articles right now," Tasha said, trying to remain polite but firm. "I just want to keep things normal for me and my son." Rebecca's smile didn't falter, but there was a hint of determination in her eyes. "I understand, but I think you could inspire so many people. Your story is powerful, Tasha. You're a mother, a hard worker, and someone who has been thrust into the spotlight for all the right reasons. People are looking up to you. You don't have to do it alone, though. We can help you." Tasha took a deep breath. The pressure was mounting, and it was hard to ignore. There was a part of her that wanted to tell the world her story, to be heard, to show that a single act of kindness could lead to something bigger. But another part of her, the one that had been running this diner for years, knew that chasing after fame came at a cost. "I'm not sure it's the right time for me," Tasha said quietly. "I'm focused on my family right now, on being a good mom." Rebecca's expression softened, and she reached into her bag, pulling out a business card. "I respect that, Tasha. I really do. But if you change your mind, we're here. You have a voice now, and it's a powerful one. Don't let it go to waste." Tasha took the card but didn't say anything else. As Rebecca left the diner, the weight of her words lingered in the air. Tasha stood there for a moment, staring at the card, wondering what life could be like if she embraced this newfound attention. But then she remembered Mason. She remembered their small apartment, their quiet evenings together. She remembered the smile he always gave her when she picked him up from school. That was what mattered. Not magazine covers. Not interviews. Later that evening, as Tasha sat on the couch, Mason crawled up beside her, his homework forgotten for a moment. He looked up at her with a curious expression. "Mom, why are people still talking about you? I saw a video of you with Keanu Reeves on Instagram today." Tasha smiled softly, brushing a strand of hair away from Mason's forehead. "People get excited about famous people. It's nothing, really." Mason frowned. "But why do they care so much about you? You're just my mom. You're the one who takes me to school and makes me pancakes on Saturdays." Tasha chuckled, squeezing his hand. "That's right. And that's all that matters, right?" Mason nodded, his expression turning serious. "I think you're more than just a waitress, Mom. People like you because you're nice, and you're always helping. You don't try to be someone else." Tasha felt a lump form in her throat. It had always been her goal to be the best mom she could be, but hearing her son say those words, words that acknowledged her true self, was everything. She wasn't just someone who served coffee. She was a mother, a protector, and a woman who could make a difference, even in the smallest ways. "You're right, Mason," Tasha said softly. I don't try to be anyone else. I'm just me. And that's enough. The following week, another unexpected visitor arrived at the diner. Tasha was in the back, organizing the stock, when Rick came rushing in with a man she hadn't seen before. He was tall, with dark, slicked-back hair, wearing a suit that screamed business. Tasha, you've got to meet this guy, Rick said, practically pushing the man toward her. This is David Carlson. He's with Urban Studios. He's been following your story, and he thinks you have the potential to be a star. Tasha's stomach churned. Not again, Rick. I've already told you I'm not interested in any more deals. David, however, was undeterred. He flashed a smile that seemed rehearsed. I understand your hesitation, Ms. Williams, but what I'm offering isn't just about fame. We have a documentary in the works. A documentary about the real people, the ones who have the strength to make a difference without needing the spotlight. I think you'd be perfect for it. Tasha shook her head, taking a step back. I'm not interested in being some kind of charity case. I just want to live my life with my son. David raised an eyebrow, unfazed. This could change everything, Tasha. Think about it. You could make a real impact. You could help others. Tasha's resolve hardened. I'm not interested in your impact. My son is the only impact I need. With that, she turned and walked away, leaving the two men staring after her. That night, as Tasha sat alone in the small apartment she had made a home, she thought about the constant pressure. Everyone wanted something from her. Everyone thought they knew what was best for her. But the truth was, she knew exactly what she needed. She needed peace. She needed to raise Mason in a world that wasn't consumed by media frenzy and expectations. Tasha had always been strong. But now, in the face of temptation, she was stronger than ever. She knew what she had to do. It had been a month since the offers, the constant media buzz, and the relentless pressure to capitalize on her moment in the spotlight. Tasha had turned down every pitch, every magazine offer, every well-meaning attempt to push her into the public eye. And with each no she gave, she felt herself become more certain of her path. Life in the diner had slowly returned to its calm, familiar rhythm. The noise of the outside world faded into the background, and the small, cozy space became her sanctuary once again. As she wiped down the counter one quiet morning, Tasha reflected on everything that had happened. She had been offered the world, money, fame, and opportunities to change everything. But in rejecting those things, she had discovered something far more valuable. The strength to remain true to herself, the power to define her own success, and the realization that love, loyalty, and a sense of purpose were all she really needed. But even though she had reclaimed her peace, there was still something unresolved inside her. A part of her felt like she was standing at the edge of a new chapter, and she knew she couldn't fully move forward without confronting her past, her relationship with her father, the one person who had always been on the sidelines of her life. The thought had been gnawing at her for weeks. Her father, a man who had been distant, absent in many ways, had never fully been a part of her life. Now, with everything else she had experienced, Tasha couldn't ignore the hole that remained. Could she build a relationship with him? Could they start fresh? With a deep breath, she decided it was time to find out. That afternoon, Tasha called her father's number, the one she had kept stored in her phone, buried under a mountain of unanswered calls and texts from years ago. It rang a few times before he picked up. Hello? Tasha's heart raced. She hadn't heard his voice in so long. Hi, Dad. It's Tasha. There was a long pause on the other end of the line before he spoke again, his voice a mixture of surprise and uncertainty. Tasha? Is everything all right? I'm okay. I wanted to talk, she said, her voice shaking slightly. I've been thinking a lot lately, and I realized that I want to reconnect. I don't know what that means, but I wanted to try. Another long silence stretched between them, and Tasha could almost feel the weight of the years they had spent apart. She wasn't sure if this was a good idea, but she knew she couldn't keep living with the regret of never having tried. I didn't think you'd ever want to talk to me again, her father said softly. But I'm glad you called. I'm glad you're okay. I'm more than okay, Tasha replied, smiling despite the tension. I'm really good, actually. I'm raising a son, and I've learned a lot about what really matters. And, Dad, I want you to be a part of it. Her father was silent for a long moment. I don't know if I'm the man you think I am, Tasha, but I'm here. I'm ready to try, if you are. Tasha's chest tightened. She had heard the hesitance in his voice, the doubt, but she also heard something else, a willingness to be a part of her life. I'm ready, she said, her voice full of emotion. I've waited a long time to hear that. A few days later, Tasha drove to her father's house. It was a small, modest place on the outskirts of town. Nothing like the glamorous lifestyle she had been offered in the media, but there was something about it that felt real. As she pulled up to the driveway, she felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. This was uncharted territory, but it was time. Her father was waiting on the porch when she arrived, and as she stepped out of her car, he stood up. He was older now, his hair graying at the temples, but his eyes still held the same familiar warmth that Tasha remembered. "Hey, kiddo," he said with a tentative smile, his voice rough but kind. "Hey, Dad," Tasha replied, walking up the steps to meet him. "It's been a while." Her father gave a small chuckle. "Yeah, you could say that." The silence stretched between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the silence of two people trying to figure out what came next. Finally, Tasha spoke. "I've made some decisions in my life recently, some that have changed everything for me. And I think part of that is wanting to have you in my life. If you're okay with that." Her father nodded slowly, his gaze softening. "I'm glad you called. I didn't think I had a place in your world anymore, but I'm here now. I'll always be here for you." Tasha smiled, feeling the weight of years of missed moments slowly start to lift. "I want us to start over, Dad. I want to build something real this time." He stepped forward, opening his arms to her. "Me too, kiddo. Me too." And in that moment, everything felt right. The past, the mistakes, the distance, it all started to fade away. What mattered now was the future. A future where Tasha, her son, and her father could begin to build something new. The next morning, Tasha opened the diner as usual, the familiar scent of coffee filling the air. It was a new day, and though she had no idea what the future would bring, she felt ready. She had made peace with her past, embraced her present, and was finally open to whatever the future held. As she served her first cup of coffee to a customer, she couldn't help but smile. Her life was hers to shape, and she had the strength, the love, and the courage to face whatever came next. For the first time in a long time, Tasha was at peace with herself. And that was enough.